You made it to Module 3, which is the project validation module. This module is intended to show you how you can control what workers, categories, and projects are applicable when registering transactions in different business documents and journals. The first lesson we'll cover is a validation overview, and we'll just discuss the validation functionality and what it can do within Dynamics AX. So the first question is, what is validation? And project validation is definitely an optional feature of the project management and accounting module, and it's used to control the recording of project transactions. You can use project validation to control lists of workers, projects, and categories that are available in hours, expense, fees, and items journals, item tasks, and timesheets. You can also use project validation to set up detailed restrictions to control the costs allowed on a project. The rules limit the values presented in the forms and prevent the posting of records that violate the validation setup. So there are three types of validation. Type 1 is worker project. So what this means, and first of all, the next three bullets that you're going to see are the different parameters that you can define. So there's worker project, there's project category, and then there's category worker. And you can probably guess what each one means. So worker project is basically which workers can work on what specific projects. Project categories, or what categories are applicable for each project. And then category workers are, you can say that specific categories are only applicable for specific workers as well. And when you set up these parameters, these project parameters, basically you're defining whether they're relevant. So you can list them as none, meaning you don't even use it, or you can say lookup, and it will just look up the proper value, but it will still accept a bogus value or a value that's not part of your validation. And then there's mandatory, which means the system requires you to use the validation that you have defined. So after that, there's basically the project validation groups. So a precursor to this is to set up validation. You can basically go to a specific worker or a specific project, or or I should just say a worker or project. But basically, let's just take the project. In a project, for example, you can just go to the assign workers button or the assign categories button and just manually define what categories and what workers are applicable for a specific project. Or you can use group validation, where you actually track groups. And a good example of a group might be that you have a group of 5 workers, and these 5 workers, you just don't want to go to every project that they're going to work on and assign it to them. You can create a group, and then you define your 5 workers and just define the 20 projects that they're working on right in it's a specific form, or one form, rather than having to parse through each project form. So project validation groups, I mean, they're primarily used to streamline the setup of validation. But overall, validation is basically a way to control what projects, what categories, and what workers are doing work in your system. And I guess the best practice here is not to let things break down ahead of time, and that's what I've seen. A majority of implementations, they use validation as an afterthought because they have the recording of improper categories on transactions, or people logging time to the wrong projects and stuff, and this is exactly what this functionality is built to prevent.